You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.
It's time for another episode of member-supported Combat Radio. With me is the guru, Tom Vittorino, manager of such acts as The Cult, Robbie Krieger, The Doors, Fuel, etc., etc. How are you, Tom?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
Good. Now let's go around the room with a couple of greats. One is one of our favorite Combat Radio veterans, a man behind the screenplay of Jaws, the jerk, director of Caveman. He was also in Robert Altman's MASH. Many, many interesting credits, not to mention he's the author of the acclaimed Jaws log, and, well, we'll get to all that now, and he's running for office with the WGA. Very interesting, man. Mr. Carl Gottlieb, our good friend. How are you, Carl?
Well, thank you.
I'm good. And then with us is actually somebody we admire very much, one of the people who's fundamentally, well, his artistic involvement in many of the iconic films of my past is bit of a, I would say, a landmark to say the least. Joe Alves, production designer extraordinaire. How are you, Joe?
Great.
Most people know you from everything from Escape from New York to Jaws to Close Encounters to, is there a movie you haven't worked on?
Yeah, quite a few actually, but
damn it.
Yeah, well, you hang around long enough, you can get a fairly good
Resume.
Right. Well, the two of you worked on Jaws together, which Carl...
We worked on Jaws. We worked on Caveman together.
We worked on 3.5 movies together.
3.5. The half being one studio shut down, or...
No. Well, we worked on Jaws 1, 2, and 3, and I had various positions on that.
Go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, anyway, and I had gone from a designer to producer, director on Jaws 3D, and then... Carl was doing Caveman, asked me to help him with that, and I had some other commitments, but it was very, very difficult because what he asked me to do was scout all the islands in Hawaii and Puerto Vallarta.
Hell,
and
wow,
it was really, really difficult.
That's tough.
This is my kind of director.
It was a real sacrifice on my part.
No Fiji, huh? Okay.
Joe is the source of one of my favorite Hollywood stories. We were scouting... For Caveman, we needed something that was terribly remote and looked like it was untouched by man, and the back parts of the Hawaiian Islands had that lush prehistoric look. And so we were scouting all 5 islands over in 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, even Molokai.
I love it when that's in the budget. I love it when that studio puts that in the budget and you have to go, the torture of going to scout Hawaii.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, Joe, you didn't go back and be like, Carl, I'm thinking there's some good spots possibly in the Bahamas, Virgin Islands, Tahiti.
All those possibilities, of course.
I would hate to make the wrong decision on a location for you, Carl.
Well, after after a terrible location like Martha's Vineyard, we had to.
Oh yeah.
We it's difficult work.
but the story is that we had gotten to Maui, and we had scouted Maui all day in a 4-wheel drive. We had been all over the island. Got back to the hotel. The restaurant was closed. The only place that was open was in the town of Lahaina. We had to scamper to get there. We had a 4-wheel drive Jeep, just me, Joe, and the location manager. The Hawaiian Film Commission had been with us during the day, but they were gone. So we barely made it to the restaurant, but we got to the restaurant. We had 2 bottles of wine with dinner, and now we're driving back, full moonlit night, along the road from Lahaina to the hotel runs right along the beach with the sugar plantations
that's beautiful,
on the left side, the ocean crashing on the right, moon, and the FM radio for the first time of our days in Hawaii was actually playing some good music, and it was just this idyllic moment.
Beautiful.
And Joe stood up in the back of the 4-wheel drive and put his hands on the grab bar, on the roll bar, and stood up and shouted into the night, "They're paying us to do this."
Yes. And that statement is why many studios don't any longer pay you to do it.
They have CGI now, and you don't have to go anywhere.
I wanted to talk a lot about Caveman because we ran that trailer once before with you, and we talked a lot about it. David Foster, the producer of that and the thing, and The Fog has been in here with us a couple times. But you have some great Matuzak stories, and the idea of casting Ringo Starr, what he ever do? But to cast him in a role where there's no English and there's no dialogue, is pretty exceptional move. And I don't know how you got that across his desk, but.
Well, we were looking for a leading man who had to be small and unassuming, kind of a Dudley Moore type, and Dudley was unavailable.
You went to Dudley on it.
Yeah, And also, but Dudley also has a bad foot. I mean, he had a prosthesis on the shoe.
Clubfoot, I think.
Clubfoot, yeah.
Yes.
He was
very familiar with that.
But he was willing to do it, but he had time and schedule commitments. And we're going. So there's Dustin Hoffman. He's short. There's Ringo Starr. He's short, and he brings something extra to the movie.
Right.
And it's not dialogue, so he doesn't have to have long, complicated speeches. He just has to speak caveman.
Mm-hmm.
So we got him. We offered him the part. We got him, and the rest was history. Actually, Ringo had a history before we got him.
Right.
Yeah, just a bit.
And some history because he was on the shoot. I mean, that's where he met Barbara Bach, who he's still married to, right?
I matchmake that deal.
You're a man of many talents, Carl.
Yeah, right.
You're a man of many talents. But, I wanted to actually ask you, let me backtrack a minute before you got on the fun that was Caveman, because clearly that was all work. Did you guys initially meet on, what was it, Night Gallery, Jaws? Where did you guys?
Jaws.
Jaws, and we may have met around the Universal lot before that because Stephen was under contract, and Stephen and I did a couple of Stephen's TV movies, something, the Barbara Bain pilot.
Yeah, right. Well, it was the studio system, and once you sort of bounced around, you generally found a home after so many years, and so you got locked in. So you did television or whatever, and so I did a lot of television, and Carl was doing whatever.
I was acting. I was scrounging jobs, we formally met on Jaws because I started 2 weeks before production, and Joe had been on the picture longer than anybody, including Stephen.
I would think so, right? Because you're
I was on before Stephen. I had met Stephen doing Night Gallery.
Yeah.
The Rod Serling series, and then we did ill-fated Psychiatrist with Roy Thinnis. It was 6 episodes, and Stephen directed 2 of them. And then his first feature was Sugarland Express.
So you meet him. Do you get him right away, or do you think this kid? Where's he coming from with this?
It was interesting because he was so young, and he was so enthusiastic. And I'll never forget. It might have been Night Gallery, something we were doing, and he's in the back lot, and we have the actors. He has the actors talking, and then he decides to get all the extras to start talking, and the production office goes crazy because they have to up everybody's
right.
Speed, But he just didn't know the rules. He was quite good, and.
He just wants the component without thinking from the line management standpoint.
Well, he didn't understand the structure. Even when we were scouting Sugarland Express, Bill Gilmore and I, we just drove for miles and miles, Texas. And Bill was an experienced production manager, and I had now spent a good 10 years doing television, and I started doing assistant art director on features. I did Hitchcock's Close Torn Curtain and things like that. So I was experienced, but this was a big break for me. And anyway, we're saying, oh, this is a great shot, this is a good thing, look at this location, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, Stephen said, gosh, I feel like I'm stealing from you guys, And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you have all these ideas. I said, but that's our job. Bill's looking to, financially do things that aren't going to cost too much, and I'm looking at, the
You mean
picture.
Bill Butler?
No, Bill Gilmore.
Bill Gilmore?
Bill Gilmore.
Oh, the executive. He was the production executive on it?
Exactly. But this is on
He's still around, actually.
on Sugarland. Anyway, it was sort of interesting that Stephen didn't understand that we were there to help, and, thinking that he was stealing from us, and I said, absolutely not. And so that was a growing process for him, and we had built a very good relationship from that point, But a very, very clever young guy.
Yeah, I can tell. I think most people would agree with you now. I don't know if they all knew it at the time, but
yeah. Then there's a certain amount of naivety about the structure of making movies.
Right.
He'd been making movies since he was 12?
Yeah, but he was shooting Super 8 when he made his calling card short film, Amblin. He made it very wisely. Everybody else was making black and white student films with lofty themes and theremin scores. and Stephen shot on 35 with an attractive young couple and made it look like a Hollywood movie, and got work off of that short right away.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.